Sian, if you're talking to us, we can't hear you.
I'm muting now. I mean, what am I doing? Yeah.
You're doing great.
Hey, it's good to see you. Oh, you look so beautiful.
Sian, everybody can hear you. Don't do this right now.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, well, when should I do it?
Oh, never. Just, we're going to mute you again. I can't take this.
Okay, then. All right. Well, I will stop.
Okay, we're at 36 people. I'm pretty sure. Mom, do you remember the total? Was it 36? You don't know. Ray probably knows. 36-ish. Okay. It's 3:02. I'm just going to start. Matt, do you want to mute everybody? If you know how to mute yourself, now would be a great time to do that if you're not already muted, but most of you are. Okay. So, can I get a nod if everybody can hear me all right? Yes. Okay, great. So I guess as an introduction, some of you might not know me, or maybe you knew me when I was very small. I'm Julianne Queensen. I'm one of Ron's granddaughters. I'm Miriam's daughter. My claim to fame is that I share a birthday with my grandpa, albeit 60 years after the fact. So welcome to the virtual memorial service. I'm really happy that you all could be here. I know it's a little unorthodox, not exactly what we're all used to for this kind of event, but I really appreciate everybody making the time for this. As I said, everybody's muted at the moment, and we do have the power to mute you, so we're just going to keep people muted during the program. At the very end, we will have space open for people to say things. At that point, we'll be unmuting selectively. I'll go over that more later. So I guess I'll start very briefly with a quick tech demo of sorts, just for anybody new to Zoom, to make things a little bit easier for you. Let me share my screen. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen now, correct? Yes, okay, cool. Oh, will it even let me do the, oh, it doesn't let me show what Zoom normally looks like.
Oh, sure.
So never mind, I won't show you that, but in the upper right-hand corner, if you're on your computer, there should be a button that looks like a bunch of squares like this. Yeah, I can't show you what it normally looks like, unfortunately, because I put it into screen sharing mode for me, but it says gallery or speaker. Speaker makes it so the person who is speaking is the main person on the screen. That's probably what you'll want to do for most of the program, so you can see who's talking. Gallery view is the view where you see the different kind of Brady Bunch squares of everybody, which you will want later, but right now you'll probably want speaker mode. I wish I could show you where that is, but I can't. If you need any help with anything, you can go in the chat and maybe we will see it. I won't see it, I'm busy talking. One thing to note is that there's this button here. If you can see on my screen, it looks like a minimize button. Hide thumbnail video. You'll need that later when we're sharing our screen if you want people not to be visible, because we're going to do a slideshow. When you click that, it hides people. Matt, can you see what I'm doing?
It's slightly off.
Slightly off, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hope that's sort of helpful. The other thing I wanted to show, if you haven't seen it yet, is the Gathering Us Memorial page. If you search Ron Ricketts Memorial on Google, this is the first thing that comes up. If you haven't been there yet, there's a bunch of photos, there's some videos. We did find the recording that my grandpa did with Miles Davis that he just never mentioned to us. So I put that in the videos if anybody wants to listen to that. We've actually raised $735 for the Nature Conservancy and Planned Parenthood in different amounts. So that's very cool. And I know that he would appreciate people donating to those causes that he cared a lot about. And if you have any thoughts or stories you want to share, memories and condolences is where you do that. This page is going to be up forever, so we really appreciate anybody sharing anything there. So I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about when I was sharing my screen. So I'm going to stop now. I guess, I mean, my grandpa probably wouldn't understand excessive fanfare over himself, and he definitely wasn't a man of formality or tradition. So I think it would be best if we just jump right to our first speaker. I would love to hear Sian and what she's prepared for us today. So we will unmute her unless she gets to it first.
Unmute. Hello, everybody. You can hear me, I hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yes? I love to see all these heads nodding. It's so nice. Oh, first thing I want to, whoops, didn't think there'd be tears right away. Okay, well, it's just great to see all the people who feel a connection to Ron. Thank you, and thank you all for now being in my life in a beautiful way. I love seeing all your faces. Thank you for being here. Oh boy, yeah. So I heard that he died the day after. My brother tried to contact me, but I had my phone off, as I often do. And I had, for a couple of days, a lot of thoughts and memories come up, as I'm sure you all have. So I was very moved to write, and I hope you'll bear with me. There's about 10 minutes of it here, and I'd like to share all of it. So I think some of you can resonate with it, and some of you won't. This will be new material for you. And I'm so glad I have dear friends and families to share it with. So I'm going to be reading from an actual piece of paper. So I haven't done this before on Zoom. I want to be looking at you as well as I'll have to be looking at the paper. So I hope you feel my presence. Memories flooded the eyes. How he made Mom laugh, bringing joy into our lives, taking us places, playing games with us. The father we didn't even know we longed to have. The husband our mother deserved. The love they shared that warmed us like a protective blanket. The joy they shared that radiated out to all of us children. He brought joy, peace, comfort, intelligence, humor, art, love, fine music into all the dark corners of our lives. And there were plenty of dark corners. Like a thirsty plant, I thrived under his loving care. But the way he lit up Mom's face was enough for me. When she approached me as a 10-year-old during her summer of love in Asbury Park, when she took us first three kids from the first marriage, on our very first vacation outside of New York City, she approached me and asked me how I would feel if she divorced Murray, our first father. I was surprised, exhilarated, and touched that she trusted me to ask me how I felt and how I thought my brother and sister would feel. And I said, I think they'll be fine. Because we had all been there on the day that she fell in love. I saw it. She was happy. She was never very happy. In those first 10 years, she was pretty miserable. And she married out of convenience and desperation. She was pregnant with me from another father. She didn't even tell her husband. She told nobody, and she kept it a secret. All I remember is that day when she and my aunt were together on the beach with us kids, and they couldn't get the umbrella up. And there were two handsome guys nearby who were very willing to offer help to these two very young, attractive, and sexy gals. Well, they both later became boyfriend and girlfriend. My sister to the oboe, her sister to the oboe player, and mom to the double bell euphonium player in the Asbury Park Municipal Band. This opened up a whole new summer where we actually went to concerts, which we've never done before. And basically just seeing her radiant and happy. You know, Ron filled us with a radiance and joy we had not ever known before. And for me, in the following years growing up, that radiance never left. Their love for each other was very palpable. There are a lot of photos from that time when you can just see them just looking at each other with adoration. I never had seen these looks on people's faces before. It was so important to me as a child to know that people could be happy and loving. It wasn't only his love for her that bathed us all. He loved us tangibly. He taught us card games and ball and board games, and we played together as a family. We had never done anything like this before. It was obvious in all of his actions that he wanted us united as a family. He was the first adult to have a conversation with me, to be interested in what I had to say, what I thought about. He challenged my beliefs. He taught me new things. He gave me books to read. He wrote me letters when he was on tour with the symphony. He treated me as another intellectual human being. I treasured my relationship with him. I wanted to live up to his ideals. I modeled myself after him in so many ways. He saw through me to the authentic person behind the nice girl facade that I had created to keep mom happy, which I thought would keep mom happy, but it didn't work. He urged me to be true to myself, and that was a bit scary, but I knew he was right. The babies that came later to mom and dad, Miriam and Raymond first, then Miriam. They came in my teenage years, and they were a clear demonstration of the love he brought to our family. We first three children adored them, and being the eldest, I took care of them a lot, with joy. The happiness that pervaded the house was a delight. He could be a stern father too, but he always had the intention of bringing unity and order to the family. That was very clear to me growing up. If we kids were aggravating mom, he had fierce ways of getting us back in line. I have several vivid memories of this, some very humorous. Linda used to kvetch and complain about not staying up as late as the other two. And she would just kvetch and complain, and mom never really knew how to handle that. So one night he stepped in. He made her stay up all night in front of the TV. And every so often he would shake her and wake her up and say, "Watch TV, you're not watching enough TV. Don't go to sleep, watch TV, that's what you wanted." And she never complained again. He used to remind us to leave to not leave the lights on and turn them off. And he threatened to take out our light bulb if we did. Well, that happened. It happened once to me, and that was enough. And now I always turn the lights off, and I turn everybody else's lights off too. I've become a little light Nazi, and I'm always turning things off when I leave a room. So let's see. He wanted Mom to be happy. He wanted us to grow into intelligent, caring, and considerate adults. He wanted the family to be unified and peaceful. He brought novelty, excitement, exploration, wonder, and humor into our lives. And I'm telling you, these things were not there before. So it was really welcome. We went places we'd never been before. We did things we'd never done. We lived in different parts of the country, exposed to different ways of life. Because of our trips, I fell in love with the natural world under his care, and that love has shaped my life ever since. His love of humor was a huge influence, and all the proponents he loved became mine too. Ernie Kovacs, Sid Caesar, Steve Allen, Charles Schultz, Pogo. We laughed together as we watched comedians or listened to him read Pogo. We sang together Pogo parodies of Christmas songs and nursery rhymes. 4 and 20 blackboards baked until they cry. And yeah, and the one about, deck us all with Boston Charlie, Walla Walla Wash and Kalamazoo. Nora's freezing on the trolley, hula bula, Pensacola, hullabaloo. You know, he was just amazing in that way. And he helped me to learn to love the absurd, the surreal. I became a fan of Dali and Fellini. His love of the Steve Allen Show showed me the originality and the novelty of the Nikolai dancers, whose music and dance was wildly creative and abstract and humorous. And that totally influenced my own later choreography when I became a dancer. He would read aloud to us from whatever was interesting him in the moment, in the newspaper and magazine and books. And because of his avid interest in health, I read all the Adele Davis books that came home with him. And that interest in health and nutrition has stayed with me all my life. Dad brought light and love to all of us. He completely transformed our lives in far-reaching ways. I'm deeply, intensely grateful for the fateful day on the beach. When Mom fell in love and I saw radiance, delight, joy, and love for the first time in my life. I've been bathed in that love ever since. And today I cry tears of gratitude, loss, and remembrance of a life totally transformed and shaped by a beautiful human being that my dad was. In my life, I've had 3 fathers. My biological father, who I never knew till my 20s. The man my mom married when she was pregnant with me. And the man she later married out of love, Ron. That man was my real father. And I will always treasure his memory. So, the seeds he planted in me have flowered. I'm much more like him than any of my biological relatives. I'm truly his daughter. For the seeds he planted in my life and cultivated with care have been flowering and making seeds of their own. My love of nature, I'm an environmental educator now. His love of education and learning, I became an elementary school teacher. His love of nutrition, which I studied and utilized and shared. his love of originality and novelty, fine music, which has shaped my performing in dance, theater, and singing. These seeds he planted, all these seeds, shaped my character. So I want to say, thank you, Dad. Thank you. And thank you, all of you, for being witness to this. Thank you. I love you all.
We love you too, Sian. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thanks, Julianne.
It's a tear. I guess we'll just move on to the next one. Just keep them rolling in. If everybody's ready. I'd like to have Ray share something that he prepared as well. Ray, do you know how to unmute yourself?
Let me know if the sound isn't good at any point, okay?
You sound great so far.
Okay. So mine won't be as encyclopedic, which I guess that's okay. I guess the things that I reflected on are things like, I think my dad wanted me to be much more interested in nature as a kid than I was as a kid. I mean, we loved going for walks with him, and Miriam will attest to this. Whether the goal was ice cream or popcorn or just walking, we loved it all. But ultimately, as a kid, I poo-pooed his love of nature and the outdoors. I can remember one time when he just took me outdoors and just pointed to the sky and went, "See, look." And I was like, "Oh, Dad," "Oh, Dad." But that stuck. And as I grew older, I certainly learned, I love the outdoors and love being outdoors, miss it with COVID, not being able to do the kinds of trips that we have done. And I'm glad it happened before, when Dad was still active, and we enjoyed many, many good hikes and walks with him, because I finally saw the light. But I think, I think Dad didn't maybe understand the double, I don't want to call it double message, double richness that he put in front of us. So he wanted us to love nature, but he also was a paragon of culture, classical culture, 4 hours of practicing a day. The reality of cultural production was in our face. So I was interested in that, right? I was interested in classical rigor and discipline. And I never studied trombone with him, but I understood the ideal from what he would talk about with his students, the very classical combination of flexibility or relaxation and hard work, right? Or putting it another way, working hard but never showing that you work hard, right? Different than other kinds of arts, right? He was a classical musician, and that's maybe part of why he didn't think Miles Davis was important. I don't know. He knew who Miles Davis was. I know. So when I studied ballet, I don't know if he knew how much I took that idea into it, the idea that you're working hard always and always in the moment, never ceasing to work, but you're working to make it relaxed and, in ballet terms, flexible and effortless. So that's something I remembered from Dad. And, needless to say, our parents were never resistant to a professional performing career. In fact, you could say they were a little too, expected a little too much, because of course, what could be better than to be a professional unionized performer, which I did become, right? Yay for the union, right? The union is what changed him in some ways from the more itinerant musician that he was, although, you know, he might have still been in the union then, to the more stable musician that we knew growing up. So my 3 older siblings had a different experience with that, of traveling a lot. And I don't know, in today's terms, it seems incredibly unstable to me. I can't imagine. But that's because I grew up with so much stability. I mean, I have a vague memory of the first move when I was, I don't know, 2 years old. Vague. But basically, my sister and I grew up in the same house, and my dad had the same job. Although, you know, he worked a lot. He worked a lot all his life. And I did question later in his life how much he had of those jobs he had to do. Although I trust that he did what he felt he had to do. Because I wondered in the end, you know, when his hearing gave way and he gave up playing cold turkey, in some ways, I felt like he didn't miss it, right? He was happy to stop playing. I think he liked playing more than he liked music, though, honestly. I mean, he was a practitioner. So I think music for him was about, you know, the pride of playing well and shaping that incredible intonation that he had. I don't think he was that interested in listening to music. Certainly not the repertoire that he shined in, or because being a brass player, the heavy German repertoire, which of course I've grown to love. But he ended up, you know, liking Puccini and Italian opera, which, you know, that was his preference. But I think in the end, he didn't care that much about music. Too many gigs, too many nutcrackers, too many Doc Severinsen at the State Fair of Minnesota, right? I think he was happy to retire and not feel compelled to work so hard. So I thought was great. I mean, my dad became much more relaxed because of that. I'll just stop by saying, you know, he's the Goy half of my Jewish Goy heritage, right? I like to say my biography is going to be called, this is very hard to say, but Jew hairs in Goy pores, right? Every time I shave. Big bristly hairs and little Goy pores. Anyway, maybe that's a little over the head. Anyway, but he could, you know, he had that Protestant work ethic a little too much sometimes. Like, for instance, I remember him saying once, meals are just an excuse for people to get together and talk. As if that was a bad thing, right? And, you know, he liked to say that he was a loner. He always claimed that. Although, of course, he got more social when he got older. But the truth was, he was rarely alone. He was always probably surrounded by people, whether family or workers, all the time, right? So he's a funny person to be called a loner, although he did go on his bike trips and hikes. Anyway, that's what I have to say. So there's more to be said, but I'll stop. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you, Ray. I was definitely cracking up during it, but nobody could hear me. It's fine. Okay, so let's move on to my mother, Miriam, if she's ready to share. You good?
I am. I'm good.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Oh,
Yep.
we've got reverb happening with Jacques being close by.
Jacques, get out of here.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Does that sound better? Okay, great. Okay, if you knew my dad well, you probably know that he was prone to overanalyzing everything. He especially liked to overanalyze himself. Weirdly, though, he was oddly unself-aware about certain things about his own person. I'm making Ray laugh. He had no idea how charming he could be. People who would just meet him for a couple of minutes would take an instant liking to him and find him amusing and interesting. And he was always interested in drawing people out and asking them questions about themselves. So, and people loved that. And he had that great smile. I'm sorry. And that sense of humor. To me, the sense of humor is that my mother used to say all she cared about in a man was a sense of humor. And I would have to agree with her. It's the most important thing. Rarely, not often, but sometimes when I was a teenager, we would play piano duets together. We had a few different books of piano duets, and I was studying piano. And of course, he played a few different instruments. He played piano quite well and sight read much better than I did. We had this book of Mozart symphonies adapted for a piano duet. And it wasn't easy for me sight reading. We kind of hashed our way through them, and it was not pretty. Sorry, Wolfgang. It was sad. But we kept going because he wanted to help me hone my skills, and it was kind of fun. We actually got a fit of the giggles while we were playing because it was so bad, and we were having trouble staying together, and we were screwing up. He was screwing up. I was screwing up. We started laughing. And then I'm not sure how it started or who started it, but it went from a piano duet to a race to the finish. So we were trying to see who could get to the end of the piece first, and it just was going faster and faster, and we were laughing so hard. I'll always remember that. It was pretty amazing. I think he won the race actually too. He often said surprising things that made me laugh. I mean, that kind of peculiar wit that I think has carried down to many members of the family in different ways, wonderfully, to my kids as well. Even when he wasn't feeling well. When he came to live with us in June, my husband ordered some bells. Whoops, I can't do like that, so that if he's by his bedside or his favorite chair, he could call for us without having to holler. And he looked at them and he said, "What, did you steal these from a hotel?" So even though he wasn't feeling up to his usual self, he still found the humor in things, which was pretty great. I'm grateful for that. I'm also grateful for certain other personality traits. Both of my other siblings have kind of alluded to that a bit. He probably would have made fun of it as his Protestant work ethic or type A behavior, but having to be a musician, he knew how to focus his attention on a goal and do that consistent daily hard practice to get there. That any musician, many of you who are musicians know you need. It wasn't just about the music though. I mean, that definitely helped him go from being that 10-year-old who barely knew how to assemble his instrument to being a consummate musician who played amazing baritone horn solos and trombone. Everyone who played with him knew how good he was, as well as being an excellent teacher. But after his hearing left and he didn't play anymore, he still had goals. And Sian has talked about this a bit. He was very into the health thing. He always believed that if he worked hard enough on his physical strength, exercising, and worked smart, did the right kind of exercise, he would become healthier, stronger, better. He took up Pilates at the age of 86. Who does that, right? But that belief is something that has become part of me. When I needed to study something hard or learn an instrument or tackle a difficult language or try to learn any new skill, which I continually try to do, I have learned to have faith in that daily practice, that if I consistently work on something, I trust that I will get better at it, even if it doesn't always seem that way. And that comes from him. It's something, someone can tell you that when you try to take lessons or take a class or something, but a lot of people don't believe it. And it's something you have to see modeled and live yourself to really understand it. So I am so grateful for that. I mean, that is probably one of the most valuable lessons among many. I'm so glad I got to know him as well as I did. Without him, I would not be the person that I am. I'm glad my kids got to know him so well. And I'm gonna miss him every day. I'm done.
Thanks, Mom. Okay, so I think the next thing I'd like to do is play a slideshow for you all that I put together. This would, once I start sharing the screen, and once Matt does, this would be the time where you'll probably see a block of like people on the edge of your screen that you'll want to minimize, like I attempted to show you, just so you can see everything better. So it's a slideshow of pictures of Grandpa, and it also features quotes that I gathered from various letters and emails from him. And we'll be playing that along with a really beautiful piece called A Prayer for the Dying, which was made by Norman Bolter, who is here. He was one of Grandpa's students, which is pretty incredible. He told me that the sentiment behind the song is go thee free. So I hope that you guys like it. I hope you enjoy watching it as much as I enjoyed putting it together. Okay, thanks everybody for watching that. Told myself I was not going to cry because I've seen it plenty of times at this point. So there are just two more things I'd like to do before wrapping up and going to the portion where everybody gets to share something. First, kind of piggybacking off of things that were said by Ray, I also experienced Grandpa's love of nature, and as a child was not interested. I was not interested in the scenic route. I didn't understand why we had to walk somewhere where we could very easily drive instead. I simply didn't get it. Although he did support my one interest in nature as a child, which was walking down Irving Avenue, taking a left, finding the stone wall right on that corner, picking all the moss off of it. It had to go. And he was absolutely fine sitting with me for I don't know how long. I had no sense of time as a child, obviously, but he facilitated that important project that I'm happy I got to give to the community. I do now, as I'm very lucky, I feel that I got to know him in general, but got to kind of grow to appreciate the things that he loved. And I did find a love of nature. Sorry. And I just wanted to read something from a book. It's very short, I promise. It's 2 paragraphs. There's an author, Terry Tempest Williams, who is a really excellent nature writer and also a lover of birds. Grandpa loved birds. I should call him Ron if I'm being formal, but I'll just call him Grandpa, I think. So this is from When Women Were Birds. And it just made me think of him. I said I wasn't going to cry while I read this. Okay, it's fine. How shall I live? I want to feel both the beauty and the pain of the age we are living in. I want to survive my life without becoming numb. I want to speak and comprehend words of wounding without having these words become the landscape where I dwell. I want to possess a light touch that can elevate darkness to the realm of stars. And then later she says, how shall we live? Once upon a time, when women were birds, there was the simple understanding that to sing at dawn and to sing at dusk was to heal the world through joy. The birds still remember what we have forgotten, that the world is meant to be celebrated. Okay, so the last thing that I want to do, I'm not sure how well it will translate over Zoom, but we're going to give it a shot. Now would be the time to switch to gallery view. If you aren't there already, by clicking that button at the top, if you're on your phone, you can swipe left and right to switch between views. Gallery view is where it's kind of Brady bunching. So my grandpa was both very interested in Italian. Ray mentioned the Italian opera, but he also was interested in the Italian language. So this is an Italian tradition I would like to do, which also kind of corresponds with him being a musician. So we're all across the country right now. And I think it would be really nice, I'm not gonna cry. It would be really nice to do a round of applause for my grandpa's life. I'll tell you when, and we're gonna, if you guys can all unmute yourselves. I think, Matt, are you able to unmute people, or do you just ask to unmute?
Just ask.
Okay, if you know how to unmute, please do, but I think the sentiment's the same, that we're doing this across the country. So, for the life that he led, and for the jokes that he told, for everything that he taught us, a round of applause for Ronald Ricketts' life.
Encore.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We're going to now open up the space to anybody who wants to share anything. Matt, can you mute everybody? Just to make this clean and easy. We're gonna mute everybody, and then if anybody has something they would like to share, if you could raise your hand physically, I think that would be easiest. I will call on you, and then you can unmute yourself. Matt can ask to unmute you as well. Okay, so Margaret, I see initially. We could, can you, yep, she's
I
there.
will be very brief, but I have to say some things about Ron. He was such a delight. I had the great and glorious privilege of spending quality time at the Ricketts household as a child. Probably the first 14 years of my life I spent with Miriam and Raymond, and Sian babysat us. And I know so many of these faces. And we and it was my opportunity to escape my crazy household with Jim and Emily White. So, by comparison, Ron and Shirley felt like, wow, pretty normal, good. And Ron was the perfect antidote to Shirley. She was difficult, but he was a total delight, an absolute joy. And as many have pointed out, his opportunity to share music was brilliant. We would dance to Firebird. We would listen to La Boheme and sing the children's parts. It was a glorious time growing up partially in the Ricketts household. It is my treasured memories and makes me the person I am today. But the biggest ones, two anecdotes about Ron that I think are very telling. He was the fittest human being I had ever seen in my life. He jogged before anyone else. This is like Forrest Gump. He went out, he was jogging in 1967. And Miriam and Raymond and I would be down at the lake and we'd be horrified because Ron would be jogging by in shorts. It was not done at the time. But it was lovely, and he was so endearing and so lovely. And the second part was someone else made a mention that sometimes we children would be a little much for everybody in the household, and Ron would swoop in and take on some of the child distraction duties. And he would take Miriam and Raymond and I to Minnesota orchestra rehearsals. And we were allowed to sit in the front row quietly, like little mice, with drawing paper and draw in time to the music. I don't know if Miriam and Raymond remember these moments. They are some of my crystalline pieces of growing up. And Ron would lean over in the middle of practice and wink at us and, and make us feel like we weren't a burden, like we weren't a problem to have there. But I'll never forget that my whole life, that he was so embracing of us and so caring and so kind. And of course, the jogging shorts, that was something else too. Thank you, I appreciate the moment. And thank you, Ron, for being all those things.
Thanks, Margaret. It's very fun to hear about your childhood with Grandpa in it. Does anybody else have anything they would like to share? Oh, Max, sorry, I have to flip between two screens. Go ahead, Max, if you're able to unmute yourself.
So for those of you who don't know me, my name actually is Max Bonecutter, believe it or not, which is the perfect name for a trombone player. And there are young people who thought that my name was like a nickname or a stage name or something. Oh, your name is really Max Bonecutter. But I had the pleasure of sitting between Ron and Ross Talbert, who is here. Hi, Ron. Hi, Ross. And for 5 seasons in the Minnesota Orchestra, which is relatively short amount of time. But the people that you travel with and are in the orchestra with, you get to know kind of like family, not like, you guys who are from his real family. But it was a real joy to get to work with Ron because, as everyone has been saying, he was a consummate musician, very intelligent, had a great sense of humor, had a very positive attitude. And there were various stories that I could tell just from those brief 5 years that I was in the orchestra, but I'll just stick with one, and then one sort of general observation about Ron. He was an astute, he had an astute ability to observe and to remember events and people. I remember this one rehearsal with Stanislav Skrovichevsky, who was the music director when I came into the orchestra. And I can't remember the piece now. And Ron leaned over to me and he said, now he's going to tell you that at 2 measures after C, that B natural you have, you're going to have to play it louder because you're the only one in the orchestra that has that note. So we were rehearsing along, and when it came to that B natural, I played it as loud as I possibly could. And we went past that, and later Skrovichevsky stopped, and he looked back at me and he said, Mr. Bonecutter, at 2 measures after letter C, you have a B natural, and you are the only one in the orchestra who has this B natural. So be sure to play it more loudly. And so it didn't matter to Skrovichevsky what I had done. It was in his mind. It was going to happen anyhow. But Ron had seen this happen before, and he knew exactly what was going to happen. And he did this in other rehearsals as well. So he had a great sense of humor and had this great ability to observe. And the other observation I'd make about Ron, just in general, is that he was always musing about the meaning of happiness. And he would talk about it, and I can't even remember how it came up in conversations, but he was always wondering where one would find happiness. What is the meaning of happiness? And in hindsight, I think that's really ironic, because I think Ron was one of the happiest guys that I ever knew. He always had a smile. He always had a positive attitude. And so those are that's my little story and my observation. And I want to say hello to all of the orchestra members that were in there when I was there. I see several of you there. I'm not going to list off the names, but I want to say hello, and also to Norman Bolter, and we've met a few times over the years. So, and David Herring, who came in after me, and he's probably got all kinds of stories to tell about Ron. And so anyhow, those are my stories and my observation.
Thank you so much. I love hearing orchestra stories because I was a post-orchestra Ron. Does anybody have anything else? David Herring?
Yeah, hi Max, it's good to see you. I just say I had the great privilege of sitting as well where Max sat after Max was here, in between Ron and Ross. And Ron was just a fantastic colleague, really a great musician. And when something that's rare in our business, he was able to subsume his ego and just get in there and accompany people. That was one of his great talents. As well, he was a great soloist with the orchestra. He played euphonium solos, tenor tuba stuff for the orchestra with some really challenging work over the years, and did a great job. I'll tell one very short story about Ron. It goes to the point of his love of the outdoors, and even to a crazy extent. And I think this illustrates a little bit of Ron's determination. One year he decided he wasn't going to drive a car anywhere. And that included to any rehearsal or performance that the Minnesota Orchestra gave through any point of the year. That meant he walked to Northrop every time we played Nutcracker. He walked over to St. Paul to play concerts over there, and he did it. I mean, he just actually, through snowstorms and so forth, he just did that. And I think it was just his, he just wanted to prove that it could be done, and he did. I will always miss Ron. He was, as well as being a great musician, he was an intellectual person and very intellectually curious. And I was, in my visits with him later in life, he would always talk about the things he read and the things that he was curious about. And so I'm grateful for Ron's presence in my life, and will always remember that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that he's always been belligerent, not just in the time that I've known him. I think I saw another hand earlier. Norman, if you're able to unmute.
Hi. I want to say, first of all, that I really appreciated hearing everyone's stories, filling in so many different kinds of gaps. And Sian, I must say that when I first saw you, it really reminded me of Shirley. It really, really did. You know, and Max, we actually, after I was already in the BSO, and I got together with Ron and Max at the house on Irving, and we used to play some trios, which I remember very well. And Ron said to me, I really like your sound. Don't have Skorochevsky get a hold of you. But it goes way back for me. I was at a music camp, St. Paul Philharmonic Music Camp in 1966. And there wasn't a trombone teacher there. And I had been taking trombone. I started when I was 9. I took it from a trumpet player named Stephen Chanette, and who obviously was first trumpet of the Minneapolis Symphony. It was still called Minneapolis Symphony at that time. And he heard me and said, yeah, you should get some lessons from, you know, a trombone player. And he was very complimentary. It was very nice. And I can't totally remember. I think I saw the Minnesota Orchestra at a concert, Minneapolis Symphony at a concert, and I went up to Ron or something and talked with him, and we set up a lesson. And so I remember my mother taking me over to 34 Irving and walking in the door. I couldn't believe I was there. I was so ridiculously excited. And went upstairs, second floor, and I had my little student model trombone at Olds Ambassador. It's a small, good horn for jazz, but a lot of people started trombone on that kind of instrument. And I remember I started to play, and Ron asked me, can you go up to a high B flat? So I did, and he said, oh, that's good, that's good. He wasn't actually in lessons overly complimentary. It was very, almost matter of fact, nice, but not over the top. And so he said, let's work on your sound a little bit. So he said, can I see your instrument? I said, sure. And he wiped off, you know, with his hand, just wiped off the mouthpiece a bit, picked it up, and I went, oh, that's the way a trombone can sound. And I said, how did you do that out of my trombone? And he said, just kind of looking at me at the side a little bit, said, it wasn't easy. So I got very fascinated with his little squirt bottle to put water on the slide. And I said, oh, I want one of those. And I had my mother go and get me a water bottle. Actually, it wasn't a water bottle, it was a squirt gun. And so I'd take it and be squirting my slide with it. And I came to the next lesson a few weeks later, and Ron noticed, said, hey, what's in your case there? I said, oh, this is what I'm putting, you know, water on my slide with my squirt gun. And he said, can you get me one? I said, yeah. He said, because I'm gonna sneak down like this underneath the music stand, and then I'm gonna shoot at the conductor. And I think I tried that during one of my elementary school band things. But he was just great. he was introducing me to a lot of concepts very young, and he knew I would practice all day long too. I guess maybe I'm also a Capricorn. And like I know Ron was, December 31st. And so we just kind of went on with all these different concepts. And it's interesting because he said, now I want you to get an embouchure visualizer, which was a mouthpiece rim that was cut out and held together on a little stick, and you could play, okay, to make sure your embouchure was in good working order. Because he said my embouchure smiled too much, and he wanted to get it so it was a little more structured in a way without stretching back. So he demonstrated on it. And I told my father, Dad, we got to get an embouchure visualizer. He looked at me like I had 6 heads and went, what in the world is that? I said, well, it's like this. And we went to Schmidt Music Company. No, actually we didn't. We went to Chester E. Growth. And we found one. And it was hysterical. So my dad said, you know, this is an $11 bubble blower. Now, that's what he got me for Hanukkah. And I could go on with other things, but I want to say one thing that's very touching. After Ron left the orchestra, I had a student who studied with me at New England Conservatory that got the principal trombone, Doug Wright. And he asked me to come in and play second on some things. And I was very well aware that I was sitting in Ron's chair. And I remembered the sound he used to get. And that was very, very touching for me. And also, more often than playing trombone, they asked me to come and play euphonium, which Ron was just a world-class euphonium player. I just happened to learn it. But I was very touched to play the planets and record Ein Heldenleben, and knowing that Ron did a spectacular job all the time on those things. And I got to sit and play with David, which was great, and with Ross on the Ein Heldenleben. And those were the best Ein Heldenlebens I played, and that's true. And I was very touched to play with the orchestra that Ron did and my other teacher, Stephen, did. And I'll never forget that. And I'll never forget that Ron actually came to my father's funeral in 2007. And he gave me such a big hug. I think I cried. So thanks, Ron, for everything. And thank you all for sharing your stories. It really filled in a lot for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Norman. Whew. Does anybody else have anything? Ellen Hargis, hello. If you would like to unmute yourself.
I think I did it. Great. I just want to be brief. Like Norman, this has been wonderful for me for filling in gaps. I have a strange and wonderful connection with the Ricketts family. My grandma and grandpa lived across the street from Ron's mom and dad, Annie and Ray. And that dark little boy in the pictures, the very first set of 3 to 5 pictures, is my dad, who played the cornet, and Ron played the trombone. And there are lots of stories about those boys, everything from cowboys and Indians to being in band together. And you know, Ron was a little older than my dad, and he always looked up to him. I'm sorry he can't be here today, but I know he's going to watch the recording of this. And it's funny, I mean, I have these memories of Ron's mom, first of all, Annie Ricketts, coming across the house and saying with a cigarette, "Damn it, Ann." My grandmother was named Ann too. "Damn it, Ann, where's your ashtray?" She was this big brash woman who scared the pants off me, but everyone loved her to death. And I think Shirley had a lot of that kind of brash, strong woman energy that was also terrifying to me as a youngster when they piled me and my baby sister in the car and we all drove out to New York to see Dad's friend Ron. And I got to see the ocean and, you know, see this big house with all this family that was so different from mine. Those are really, I just share these because it shows you that there are these imprinted memories from my whole life that involve the Ricketts, that involve Ron, that involve Annie, that involve Ray. Then there's a big gap. And when I was in college and I was studying early music, I remember that Ron called me up. I don't know if you remember me, Ron Ricketts, I'm your dad's friend. I play in the orchestra. I got a student who wants to learn the sackbut, and I understand you're in early music. What can you tell me? And later, Steve Lundahl, that very student, was in a group that I was in. We made several recordings together. So we had that weird connection. Ron would come whenever I was in Minnesota, when I was in St. Paul doing the radio show, doing, you know, Bill, the St. Paul Sunday program, or playing on the Schubert series. You know, Ron would come. I remember singing My Funny Valentine to him once. I think it was his anniversary, and Shirley was ill and couldn't come, and I threw a piece in for them to dedicate. And it was so much fun to see all the Rickettses out there. And then craziest of all, just, I don't know, what was it, 15 years ago, Sean? I get this call from a voice teacher up at Northwestern, and shortly afterward from Ron Ricketts again, that this young woman named Shawn Ricketts wants to take voice lessons from me. And so once again connected with the family, it's just nuts. You know, I've been to dinner at her house with her parents. She's been a colleague of mine now. She's sung in my group. The connections just keep coming. Ray and I have become friends. I've gotten to know Bill a teeny bit from times when I've been in Philadelphia. But I think the real glue is what you've all been saying about Ron, that he has this amazing web, this way of connecting people and making you feel immediately part of the family and part of the experience. And for me, having a musician friend for my parents to relate to, when I became this weirdo who didn't, you know, follow the usual path, I think it gave them hope that everything would be okay, that I wouldn't be living in my car somewhere. And they understood that it could be a life of dignity and fulfillment and normalcy and everything else. So, and I get weepy too, because he was so kind to me. He's a very kind man, really meant a lot. Thank you all for including, for letting me come and be part of this and for filling in some of my gaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. I always found the Ellen Shawn story quite remarkable. Okay. Oh, you said Ross raised his hand? Hi, Ross.
There are so many things that I could say about Ron. Both on and off stage, he was terrific. When I first came to the orchestra, I couldn't believe how well he played. What a wonderful sound. He had it all, everything. But the most outstanding thing that I remember was he was so reliable. I do not ever remember him coming in wrong at any time in the whole career that he had with us. And that is really saying something. Solid, solid, solid. Now off stage, it was a little different. He might wear socks that didn't match to rehearsal or other things. But what I really appreciated about Ron was not only was he a great friend, but his sense of humor was amazing. He always loved to tell me stories about himself, and they always had a funny ending. I remember one of our first conversations when I first got into the orchestra was regarding Asbury Park, because I had played there in the summer as well as Ron years before. And so we had a lot to talk about. And so he said, I have a story I want to tell you. He said, you know, when I first went there, I hadn't been married too long, and we needed cash. He said that was a terrible job for pay, and I can vouch for that. And he had to have another income of some sort, so he decided to drive a taxi. He said things were going pretty well. He went to pick up his first ride, and the man said, "I'd like to go to 1200 Asbury Avenue." And of course, in those days, no GPS. And of course, Ron, just having arrived in Asbury Park, didn't know the streets too well. He says, I don't think I know where Asbury Avenue is. And the man very indignantly said, "It's the main drag." So I loved Ron. He told these stories about himself, and with no shame. They were so funny. And, I will really miss Ron. He was a terrific guy.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound good.
Okay. Yeah, I was a trumpet player in the Minnesota Orchestra, and then sat in front of Ron for many years. So whatever hearing loss I have, I can probably blame on him. But we played together, in not only in the orchestra, but in several smaller groups, brass quintets, and we played kids concerts all over the metropolitan area in Minnesota. And he was a great friend. And the one thing I remember about Ron was his great curiosity. He always wanted to be learning something new. He would come in on Monday morning and say, "I read a new book," and he would start spieling all of this stuff that he had learned. And so he always had this great intellectual curiosity. And I remember, and somebody mentioned about him walking. I remember one time when we were in New York City on tour, we had a day off, and Ron decided he was going to walk the entire length of the island of Manhattan, all the way from the Battery up to the cloisters on the far north. And he did it. It took him most of the day, but he did it. And so, he was just a unique guy. And it was a pleasure to have known him.
Thank you. Yeah, I think many of us have probably experienced the book summary right after he's read a new book. Is there anybody else? I'm trying to make sure I'm looking at both pages so I'm not missing anybody. Anita, are you able to unmute yourself?
Hi.
Hi.
Well, my name's Anita, and my family, Emily, Jim, and Raymond, and my sister Margaret and Wally, we were very tightly connected to the Ricketts family, and we were back and forth continually. And between the four adults, it was often fiery, but Ron was always a very kind and stabilizing presence. And he always had a beautiful smile, and he had a great sense of humor. He modeled for me a more patient kind of father than the one I had, but he was really a remarkable person, and he brought the spirit of music and congeniality to our house, and it was great. And I also vividly remember my sister Margaret's relationship to Miriam and Raymond, and how much fun they had, and they had kind of a very, very interesting imaginary life too, as I recall. So I just wanted to share that. It's great memories of a wonderful human being.
Thank you for sharing, Anita. Is there anybody else? Francis, there you go.
Hi, wait, unmute. Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I'm present here from the center of Canada, In some sense, I'm a bit of an anomaly here because in some sense I can say that I didn't know Ron. But I'm one of those people that Miriam referred to, one of those people who I felt instantly at ease and safe, and in the presence of a man who knew how to welcome. So I knew the Ricketts. It's 50 years ago. That's a long time ago. And I lived in their home. I don't know how long it was for. It wasn't an easy time in the family's life, but Ron invited me in, and Paul, hi there. He was there as well with Phil. And I was there to help care for these two remarkable kids, Ray and Miriam. I was in the States illegally. The FBI did take me away, but I was teaching in a free school, and Ray and Miriam were students. And I just want to say, somebody here mentioned, I think it was Margaret, that Ray and Miriam were maybe embarrassed when their dad was jogging way back then. These two kids made me walk the streets around their home while they yelled out, "Child power, the power of the hour." And that was kind of embarrassing to me. I was 21 at the time, but they were gung-ho. They were remarkable children. So I don't forget my time in that home. I never forgot Ron. I never forgot you, Ray, and Miriam. I was looking at pictures and trying to find the kids I knew, and I have. I just, I don't know why this man, why I'm able to recognize him in all those exquisite pictures. I love the slideshow. It's lovely to meet Miriam, to meet your daughter. She's beautiful. Yeah, and that's it. And I'm just grateful to have so many of those unknown parts of your dad and your grandfather coming forth, because he was lovely. So thank you. Yep.
Thanks, Frances. I'm really happy that you're here. Sally, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, I'm Sally. I'm a neighbor of the Ricketts. I'm of the era of Ray and Miriam and Margaret when we were young. My memory of that household is walking down the hill. I lived about a block away, closer to the Greek church, and I'd walk down the hill to hang out with Miriam more than Ray, and you'd hear the trombone playing. You could just hear it. The windows were open. It was a big old beautiful house with windows, and I always wondered if the neighbors got irritated at the loud sound, you know. Then you'd walk in the house, and whomever was the student who talked about going up the stairs, it was a home that was beautiful. And you were first greeted by the grand piano, which I was a close friend of Miriam's, and she was constantly doing this. And that was fun. My favorite memories of Ron are the glasses. Oh my God, he would take off his glasses and put them on and take them off, and they'd hang down here, and he put them on. My gratitude to him goes that he taught me how to be present when someone was speaking. You know, I was just a neighbor kid down the street. And when I stopped by and I ran into him in the kitchen, because what teenager isn't hanging out in someone's kitchen? You know, he's eating his nuts and his dates and his whatever he had. And, you know, I'm looking for something good to eat. And he would talk to me. And the people who've spoken about Ron making you feel like you mattered, he really could do that. And I was just a kid. I was just a neighbor. So from the sounds of walking down Irving to walking in that beautiful home to the attention he shared with me, one of my final favorite pieces of gratitude is I came from a family that was not musically inclined, although I did marry a violinist, so that kind of worked out okay. But what he taught me and gave to me was tickets to the orchestra. I would go with Miriam, I'd go with friends. I, as a teenager, got more exposure to music than most kids. And so when I tell people my love of music, I said, well, somebody has to be in the audience. And I was the one who learned how to applaud at a young age. And I understood when you don't applaud, and I understand when you do. So with many, many warm memories of being teenagers with Miriam and Ray and Margaret, that was kind of my posse of sorts from the neighborhood. I'm grateful, and I'm grateful to Ron for sharing his love of music, making it accessible to me, and showing me what a real man could be like. So thanks.
Thank you, Sally. Glenn?
Hi, my name is Glenn. This is my wife, Kay. We were across the street neighbors for Shirley and Ron during all the time that we lived here and they lived here. We're still in our house. But here's one of my last memories of Ron. This is after Shirley had died, and he'd lost a lot of his hearing. But he used to go to foreign films. And Cynthia, right below you, will remember this. We'd go to foreign films, and there would be Cynthia and Ron, and he'd go to foreign films because, of course, he liked foreign films, but also they always had subtitles. And he loved it because he would go there and he could understand everything. And American films don't have subtitles. So we'd go to this Italian festival over at the MIA. And there would be Ron and there would be Cynthia. We'd chit chat for a while. And Ron still had trouble hearing, of course, but if you spoke into his ear directly, you could, and if you looked at your lips, you could understand it. We had such fond memories of him actually later in life, because when Miriam and Ray were growing up, we didn't know them that well. But then later in life, we got to know him a little bit better after he retired and he was more available in the neighborhood. So in any case, that's my memory of Ron. And
yeah,
it was a fond memory. This is my wife, Kay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, he was a great neighbor. We loved going over to their house, sitting on the back porch, and it was funny. We always have very, very lively conversations. You could always count on Shirley taking the opposite view of whatever we were talking about, and Ron just smoothing over the conversation and keeping it going. So we loved them as neighbors, and we were across the street, so we were never annoyed at all by any of the music that was playing over there. It was just enough for us to hear the beauty of it, but not the loudness of it. So it was wonderful.
Thank you, guys. I think I saw another hand, if it's still Julie Ayer.
Yeah.
Say who you are.
I'm Carl Nash, and I'm a colleague of his, a former colleague of Ron's from many years ago. And as a string player and having grown up with it, can you hear me, first of all?
We can hear you.
Yeah, and having grown up with a brass player, I kind of had an understanding of what a brass instrument should sound like in the symphony orchestra. And I was always struck by one thing mainly with Ron, was his skill and wonderful talent playing euphonium or baritone horn, as I called it. And I always look forward to that. Fond memories. I would look forward to just having him as a wonderful colleague.
And me too. I was in the orchestra too, and I felt the same way. He's so funny. He's so crazy.
Thank you for this opportunity to share.
This is very special. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I'm glad somebody finally touched on how he was basically just a complete lunatic most of the time.
We laughed a lot.
Lots of very strange things would come out of his mouth, for sure. Yeah, I see you raising your hand. Do you have something you want to add? Can you unmute yourself?
Hi, I draw a lot, so I've been drawing this, and I will find a way to get it to you. But
that's amazing.
It's a little hard to see on Zoom, but anyway.
Wow.
I'll get it to the family. I'll get it to you, Miriam.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything they would like to say? I'm flipping back and forth between screens, so I might not see you immediately. Is that it? Oh, Ellen?
This is super fast, but because you said this and I forgot in my turn of speaking about Ron being a loon, in our family, there are a lot of stories, and these are considered sort of the Ron Ricketts codex of crazy stories about him showing up with 2 different socks or 2 different shoes or having forgotten half of his outfit. And that is, in my family, I can't tell you how many times we would hear, "You're just like Ron Ricketts. He would..." It's almost, there's a litany. Anyway, I'm sure that will continue on, and it's lovely to meet all of you, and I hope you all wear mismatched socks in honor really soon.
Thank you. Okay, if that's all, I guess the program's over, the service is over. I really appreciate everybody making the time to come here to share your thoughts and even just to, learn a little bit more about Ron. I love you all. Thank you so much. Oh, don't clap. Oh, come on.
Thank you for hosting, Julianne.
Thank you, Julianne. You did a beautiful job of this, and Ron really loved you. He talked about you all the time. I'm sure you know that.
Thanks, everybody.
I'll post a slideshow on the memorial site as well if anybody wants to view that again. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Thank you, guys.